The epic encounter between the Carthaginian and Roman fleets at Ecnomus is a top contender for the title of largest naval battle in history, in terms of ship and personnel count. According to Polybius, 680 warships faced off, with an estimated 290,000 rowers and marines participating. By comparison, the Battle of Salamis between the Greeks and Persians may have fielded a similar number of ships, but these were smaller and only accounted for up to 200,000 men. It would take almost 2,000 years for galleys to once again assemble in such numbers at the Battle of Lepanto between the Holy League and the Ottomans. This encounter saw 484 warships and 150,000 men take the field. The famed Spanish Armada and the opposing English fleet fielded 330 warships. In World War I, the Battle of Jutland involved 250 warships and 100,000 men. In World War II, the enormous Battle of Leyte Gulf involved 367 warships and 200,000 men. These numbers are simply staggering and attest to the mind-blowing scale of ancient combat. The Battle of Ecnomus took place during the First Punic War. Rome had only just secured control of southern Italy and now came elbow to elbow with Carthage, which had territorial holdings along North Africa, Spain, Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and numerous other islands around the Mediterranean. The conflict was sparked off in Sicily in 264 BC when a group of mercenaries upset the local status quo, creating an opportunity for both superpowers to step in and pursue their own ambitions for the island, which played a key role in the strategic control of the region. This local matter quickly escalated into a bloody 23-year war which neither side could have foreseen. The First Punic War was a showdown between one of the strongest armies and one of the strongest navies in the western Mediterranean. The opening stages of the war saw Rome's land forces make a rapid advance into Sicily before being checked by the Carthaginian fleet's vice grip on the island, which could strangle Roman supply logistics while keeping its own fully operational. In response, Rome decided to raise a fleet of 120 warships and face the Punic forces at sea. Though they were outmatched when it came to traditional naval warfare, the Romans were able to even the odds with the invention of the Corvus boarding bridge. Both sides now found themselves on a relatively even naval footing and threw massive resources into shipbuilding so as to gain a decisive advantage. Following their victory at Agrigentum, the Romans had expanded their war aims to include the complete Punic expulsion from Sicily. Part of this strategy involved taking the fight to Carthage's doorstep. In 256 BC, the Romans made the bold decision to once again escalate the conflict by mounting an invasion of North Africa. An enormous fleet of 330 vessels was amassed and made its way down the Italian coast to Messana before sailing around Cape Pacinus to link up with the main army in Sicily. Here, the pick of the Roman infantry was taken aboard to serve as marines and provide an invasion force. The navy then prepared to set out with orders to fight a fleet action or continue the journey directly to Africa. The Carthaginians were not blind to Rome's actions and had been preparing to counter the anticipated move. They summoned a grand fleet of 350 ships, the largest in their history, to destroy the invasion force. This new armada sailed from Africa to Lilybæum before rounding Heraclea Minoa. The Punic commanders were confident in their strength and determined to seek out a direct engagement. The two fleets advanced towards each other along the Sicilian coast and came head-to-head at Ecnomus in 256 BC. Warships of this period were galleys, long, shallow draft vessels powered primarily by oar. There were many classifications of ships, but both sides at Ecnomus were composed mostly of quinqueremes, also known as fives. These were typically around 40 meters long and 5 meters wide, with a complement of about 300 rowers and 120 marines. Smaller triremes were most likely present to some degree, as well as larger hexaremes, which served as flagships. Traditional naval combat of the time revolved around ramming tactics. Ships relied on speed and maneuverability to strike at the opponent's flank, shearing off oars or rupturing the hull. In this art of war, the Carthaginians were king. The Romans, on the other hand, were new to naval warfare and could not compete on this level. As a result, they sought to redefine the game entirely by focusing on boarding tactics where they could excel at close quarters combat. To this end, they had developed the Corvus, a tall boarding bridge with a spike at the end which could be swiveled and dropped onto enemy decks if they got too close. The difference in tactics would dictate the deployment of the fleets. The importance of the battle was such that both Roman consuls, Lucius Manlius Vulso and Marcus Atilius Regulus, were present. They deployed the fleet in a compact battle order in the shape of a triangle. This would allow the ships to share overlapping defenses and find safety in numbers. The dense formation could also be used to face a threat from any direction. The Roman fleet was organized by splitting the force into 4 divisions. The first 2 divisions were each led by a consul in their respective flagships. They formed the tip of the spear, with the remainder of their divisions echeloned one after another to the sides. The base of the triangle was composed of the 3rd division, which towed the horse transports. The final 4th division deployed in a line behind this, protecting the rear and acting as a final reserve. This group was appropriately nicknamed the Triarii. The Carthaginians were commanded by Hamilcar, overall commander of the forces in Sicily, and Hanno, the general who had defended Agrigentum. They advanced in the typical battle formation of line abreast. However, the Punic commanders had no intention of fighting a standard battle. They were well aware of Rome's reliance on the Corvus and knew that a frontal assault would be suicidal. As a result, they planned to break up the compact formation before sweeping in from the sides and rear. Only then could they employ their superior ramming skills and pick the Romans apart in a series of smaller encounters. The first step in the plan would be to draw the Romans into the center. This would be executed by thinning out the line and ordering the captains to fall back as the enemy approached. Hamilcar himself would be stationed here to ensure good order. Meanwhile, the flanks were extended to vastly overlap the Romans. The left wing was deployed toward the shoreline, while Hanno led the fastest ships on the extreme right flank. This strategy of drawing the Roman war machine into a weakened center only to deliver a devastating attack from the flank and rear bears a striking resemblance to Hannibal's winning strategy at Cannae 40 years later. The battle began with both fleets approaching one another. As they drew close, the Roman commanders at the front of the fleet could best assess the Punic battle order. They would have seen a mighty fleet which both outnumbered and outflanked them. At the same time, however, they must have noticed the distinct weakness in the enemy's main line and sought to exploit it. What better target for the tip of a spear than an enemy's exposed belly? Surely, it was better to deal a killing blow immediately than wait for a larger force to overwhelm you. And so, the consuls sounded the charge and surged forward with their divisions. As the Roman fleet advanced, the Carthaginians fell back in a seeming panic. Could it be this easy? The commanders of both sides must have thought as they smiled. As the 1st and 2nd Roman divisions plunged ahead, they left the rest of the fleet behind. A large gap quickly formed between the consuls' ships and the slower 3rd and 4th divisions. At this moment, Hamilcar decided that the Romans had been lured sufficiently far enough away and signaled his ships to turn about. They swiftly engaged the enemy and a fierce fight ensued. The Roman lines may have lost a degree of their compaction in the advance, and perhaps some Punic warships were able to slip through the gaps in the formation and attack from the stern. The rest of the 1st and 2nd Roman divisions likely began to close ranks again and attempted to grapple the enemy ships with their corvi. Meanwhile, the swift Punic right flank, led by Hanno, had managed to get behind the entire Roman fleet and descended upon the rear line of Triarii. The attack here was fierce, as the swift vessels made the most of their maneuverability. The Triarii were somewhat able to reform to meet this new threat, but were getting the worst end of the engagement. With the first 2 divisions far ahead, and the 4th division caught in Hanno's attack, the vulnerable Roman 3rd division with the horse transports found itself alone. This was the exact situation that Hamilcar had hoped to create. Now, the Punic left flank, which had been executing a sweeping maneuver along the shore, smelled blood in the water and set its sights on the exposed Romans. Sensing this impending disaster, the Roman captains of the 3rd Division cut the horse transports loose and redeployed to meet the Punic onslaught. This Roman division was outnumbered and found itself driven up against the shoreline. Here they formed up, side to side, in a last-ditch effort to withstand the attack. With the shore at their rear and the Corvus at their front, the beleaguered Roman galleys were able to mount a defense. The Carthaginians were unable to breach this impregnable formation and could do little more than keep the enemy in place. The battle now was broken up into 3 distinct encounters, just as Hamilcar had wanted. However, back at the main engagement between the Punic center and the Roman 1st and 2nd Divisions, the tide of battle began to shift. Despite Hamilcar's active role in the fighting and some early success, more and more Carthaginian ships were falling prey to the Corvus and being boarded by Roman marines. Soon the line began to collapse and fell into a full retreat. Vulso organized the efforts to capture the Punic ships who failed to flee, while Regulus rounded up as many warships as he could and wheeled them about to save the rest of the fleet. His quick thinking proved critical, as these victorious ships were able to join the bitter action around the Triarii and swing the odds back into Rome's favor. Together, the 1st, 2nd, and 4th Roman divisions saw off the Carthaginians in this sector of the battlefield before turning together as one to rescue the 3rd Roman division along the shore. Here, the Carthaginians now found themselves trapped in a complete envelopment and suffered heavy losses. This final move in the last of the 3 encounters at Ecnomus brought the Romans ultimate victory. All told, 30 Punic warships were sunk and 65 were boarded, while approximately 30 to 40,000 men were killed or captured. The Romans, on the other hand, had 24 of their ships sunk with no recorded boardings and only suffered around 10,000 casualties. This was a decisive Roman victory. While the Carthaginian tactics had proved successful in breaking up the Roman fleet, they failed to deliver the final finishing blow. It seems this is largely due to the inability of the Carthaginians to effectively counter the Roman Corvus. This was particularly true in the clumsy chaos of such large fleet actions, where simpler boarding tactics proved superior to complex ramming maneuvers. Hamilcar's attempted double envelopment, however, would live on, and would be championed by Hannibal, who later proved its devastating effect. After the battle, the Roman fleet returned to shore for repair and replenishment. In short order, it once again set sail and made the crossing to Africa, delivering Roman boots on Carthaginian home soil for the first time. While Regulus's invasion would ultimately end in defeat, and the war would drag on for another 5 years, the colossal effort shown by the Romans proved their willingness to pour everything they had into a fight. This set them apart from the Carthaginians, who won their fair share of victories, but were never able to capitalize on them. Ultimately, this distinction was at the core of what made the Romans unique amongst their peers and placed them on the road to empire. If you are interested in the Roman Navy, please be sure to check out these previous videos, which cover classification, construction, operation, maintenance, and tactics of the Republican fleet. I also cover many more battles of antiquity, which you can find here. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.